So last class we primarily focused on exporting our SketchUp elevations and bringing them into Photoshop and working to create rendered elevations. And basically, we're going to learn how to use those same techniques. We're going to apply them to creating plan views. Okay, so we're going to kind of create a rendered plan, if you will. Okay, so let's also look at. Let's just make sure we're all aware of what we're doing today, and then also the next couple days. So today we're going to be doing plan views. On Wednesday we're going to look at how to do we're going to do render. We're going to do a rendered section, and then on Monday we'll do the last kind of formal lecture for the class, which will be perspectives. Okay, so we'll be working on basically doing a nice photorealistic rendering with SketchUp and with Photoshop. So we'll do that lecture on Monday, and we'll use Monday and basically all of Wednesday to complete that final exercise. Don't forget that, let's go up real quick. Don't forget that assignment 6, which is the final Yosemite cabin assignment, is due next Wednesday. Okay, so you're kind of winding down that time to be kind of finalizing those little things. Don't be spending too much time right now kind of changing your floor plans and trying to do something different. I'd probably focus a little bit more on kind of putting in the finishing details to all of the assignments that we do have. Another thing to remember is if you have not done the exercise redo or the assignment redo and you need those extra points, to be doing that soon. Okay, you won't have much time left to do these. Okay. There's also the extra credit LinkedIn profile, and there's also the attend a lecture series if you haven't done that yet. There may be 1 or 2 more left this semester, February, March, April. There's actually one April 20th, so there's one more if you guys need the extra credit. Okay, so check that out. Where is it? It's here. I don't know where exactly. Let's see. It's I think it's in one of these classrooms, I believe. I haven't gone yet. Has anyone gone to one yet?
No, but
do they change every time? Does anybody know?
No.
I think they're always in the same spot.
No, but I'm trying to point out for that April was last month.
Oh, January. Oh, yeah, it is. Never mind. Just kidding. Everything I just said is a lie. So never mind. You don't have an opportunity to do that. Although you may be able to find one if you really need the points at like Berkeley, Academy of Arts, CCA. They typically all have lecture series as well. Okay.
Can we only get extra credit for one, even though we've gone maybe like 6 or 7 more?
Yes. Unfortunately, I can't. I would give you that would be the credit of a whole assignment. But there's probably about 20 points of extra credit available right here, so that will certainly help you out. Let's see. So I think that's about it. Let's go ahead and dive right into what we're doing today, and then we'll jump over to our portfolios. If you have not done so yet, submit your portfolio on Canvas. Okay. If you want to print them, you can print them when we're all done with the lecture, and we can go over that. You can also work on them on my laptop. So either option is up to you. Well, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so let me open up SketchUp real quick. Sorry, I thought I had that open already. Come on, SketchUp. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So by now, you guys should be pretty much done with your SketchUp models. Okay, hopefully you don't have too much more work to do on them. What we're kind of focusing on today is of course the process from exporting floor plans from SketchUp into Photoshop. Now you might ask yourself, well, we've already created the floor plans in AutoCAD. Why do we necessarily need to create them again from SketchUp? Well, really the idea and the point is that you won't always be creating floor plans from AutoCAD. Okay, when you guys are in Studio, you guys may very well start the design process right from SketchUp, and that's fairly typical. Okay, so The idea is to be able to export your floor plans without having to necessarily do floor plans or sections or elevations inside AutoCAD, okay? Because usually you won't have as much time and you won't have the process that we've done in this class over in your studio class and other classes as well. Most likely you're gonna hit the ground running. You're gonna be modeling things in SketchUp and possibly other programs, although SketchUp's usually the most common kind of where you are now. So you'll kind of you'll typically hit the ground running just modeling straight from SketchUp. So there may become a point where your teacher asks you to submit floor plans. Well, instead of having to go into AutoCAD and redraw them and kind of go through that whole process again, it's important to know how you guys can do them inside SketchUp, okay? Now, luckily for us, we have modeled interior. You guys should have modeled your interior walls, being that we did use an AutoCAD file. You won't always have that luxury if you didn't if you didn't model the interiors. But I think everyone here should have a decent amount of detail on the interior of your cabin. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive right into this. So here we have our cabin. You can see that I have my exterior walls. You can see inside that I have a few interior walls as well that separate some of my spaces. Okay, so last class we created elevations, and let's go ahead and look at how we can create floor plans. So I think a couple of weeks ago when we were creating our floor plans in AutoCAD, we talked about kind of where we cut floor plans and why we cut them at the location that we do. Could someone maybe refresh the class on do we know what distance we cut our floor plans at? I think we talked about this before. What was that?
3 to 4 feet.
3 to 4 feet. Ideally 4 feet. And do we know why we cut them at 4 feet?
Most of
majority of Windows items that maybe found in larger items like beds, bookshelves and things like that, nightstands, and walls that might be low are typically below 4 feet. So
Right, exactly. So the majority of the objects that are in our floor plans, like furniture, countertops, are usually at 36 inches. All windowsills are also usually at 36 inches. So a majority of the items that are inside, that are on the exterior or in the walls of our buildings or inside of our spaces will show up in that floor plan. Okay, so that's why we typically cut our floor plans at 4 feet. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to learn to cut the floor plan. Okay, so if you go up to camera and you go up to standard views and you go to top, that will somewhat give you the kind of the basics of our floor plan. But you'll notice that right now we're actually getting more of a roof plan, right? Or if you zoom really far out, you're going to have basically a site plan. So how do you cut something below the roof, you might ask? Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to go over to we're going to go to view and we're going to go to toolbars. Okay, and I know there's a couple ways to do this, but we're going to turn on the large tool set. Okay, and we're going to hit close because we're going to click on this tool in the bottom right hand corner called section plane. And for those of you that have done working drawings in the past, you'll know what that section marker looks like. It looks like a section marker that you would see inside working drawings. Okay, so prior to clicking on that, we're going to do a couple things first. So the first thing we need to do is we need to determine where that 4 foot mark is in our ground plane. Okay, so last class when we were doing elevations, we used the rectangle tool to be able to kind of create a surface that we can create a section from. We're going to do that same thing, and we're going to go ahead and draw a rectangle like so on the ground floor plan, and we're going to go ahead and extrude that. So we're going to click on our push and pull tool, and we're going to go ahead and click on it, and we're going to type in 4 feet. Now, another thing that you may have to do, depending on what kind of a project that you have, is your ground plane may not be right at 4 feet. You may have steps that lead up to a patio. You may have a couple different conditions that would alter what I just did. So let's just pretend just for a second that my door is not here, and maybe my door is actually maybe at this bottom mullion. Okay, so maybe my ground plane is actually elevated a little bit. So what you could do is you could draw that square. Okay, use your push and pull tool, click on it, and then go ahead and reference where that ground plane might be by dragging your mouse over and touching where that ground plane actually is. And then from there, you can use your push-pull tool again and move that up 4 feet, okay? And that will be where you know where you need to cut that section, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and just backtrack a little bit so that I get my original box, 4 feet. Okay, so I know that's where I want to cut my section. So I'm gonna go over to my toolbar on the left-hand side. I'm gonna click on that section plane tool, okay? And notice that when I move my mouse around, that it changes, the color of that section plane changes to whatever plane that it's associated with, okay? So right now, that marker or that frame that's around the section tool is red. That's because it's associating itself with the red axes, okay? And as I move this around, you'll notice that that color changes, okay? So what we're gonna do is if you wanted to cut just a regular section, which we'll end up doing next class, you can actually just move this onto a surface like so. You could click on that, and now you can use your arrow tool or your move tool by clicking on it, and you can move that section to wherever you want it to, okay? So we'll go over this again next class because we'll be actually creating sections. But for now, I'm gonna go ahead and delete this section that we just created. And let's go ahead and cut a floor plan. Remember, a floor plan is essentially just a section, but it's just turned onto another axis, okay? Same thing with an elevation. An elevation is no different than a floor plan, but you're just not cutting through the building. You're actually just projecting from further out away from the building, okay? So we're gonna click on that section tool, and I'm gonna go ahead and place it on top of that box that we just created, and I'm going to click down, okay? Notice that it went ahead and created that floor plan with everything that is inside my scene, okay? So I can see my floor plan, and I can also see that box, all right? So I don't need the box anymore. I'm gonna go ahead and just get rid of these items now that we've created the floor plan, okay? So get rid of that box. If you want to, you can move it up and down. There may be some items. You do not have to cut your floor plan at 4 feet. It's the most typical location, but if by chance you have objects in your house that maybe you want to include in the floor plan, you may want to bring it up 6 inches or bring it up a foot or whatever. So that's completely up to you on where you actually cut that floor plan. But now you'll notice that we have some nice defined walls. We have our mullions, okay? We have our columns. You can see everything is pretty well defined inside my space, all right? So from here, I'm going to go up to camera, I'm gonna go up to standard views, and I'm gonna click on top, okay? So based on what we learned last lecture, when we create one of these standard views, what's the next step that we need to take to make this an actual perfect plan?
Parallel view.
Yes, exactly. We want to go ahead and make a parallel view. So you can actually tell that there's a little bit of perspective in this image right now. There's actually a vanishing point in the middle of this view that, somewhere way down in kind of the negative blue axis or the negative Z direction. Okay, so we're going to go up to camera, and we're going to change this from perspective to parallel projection. Okay, now it's still, in my case, it still almost kind of looks like I have a little bit of a perspective, but I actually have sloped walls at my base. So that's actually what you're seeing. So what I'm getting right here is exactly what I'm looking for. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and fill my screen. Whoops, I think I just accidentally rotated it just a little bit. Let me just make sure. So I'm going to go ahead and fill my screen with my floor plan, okay? So it fills up the majority of your page. And now we're going to kind of repeat those steps that we learned last class and the class before about exporting our views, okay? Remember, the goal is to not just, or is to be able to have the option to be able to either have a simple line drawing, which is okay, but to also be able to use the other SketchUp tools that we have available to us in the styles option. So let it go through its auto save. If you guys are noticing the little wheels spinning a lot during your model, what's actually happening is SketchUp is auto saving. You can change that up in your settings. You can change that to go from like every 5 minutes, which I think is the default. Change it to something like every 20 minutes, so you don't wait for 3 or 4 minutes to use SketchUp every 5 minutes. All right, so this looks good. Let's also not forget to save this. So let's go save as and week 16A. Okay, so we'll save that so I have it on my thumb drive. And we'll wait another 3 minutes. So the Warriors going to win tonight? Might as well ask this question while my wheel is spinning. I think they're playing right now.
Isn't this their fourth game?
Fourth game. This could be it for the Jazz. Sorry if you're a Jazz fan. It's not looking too hot for you. Okay. Let's move on. So we're going to go ahead and repeat some of those steps that we learned the last couple classes. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of my axes and my section planes. So I'm going to go up to View. I'm going to click on Section Planes. I'm going to click on, actually I'm not going to click on Section Cuts. If I uncheck Section Cuts, I will lose my section. Okay, it'll just look like a roof plan again. So I'm going to uncheck Axes and I'm going to uncheck Guides. Okay. So I don't need this little line right here.
There's one inside.
And there's a little person inside. That's fine. I'll fix that in Photoshop. Okay. No need to try to spend a ton of time trying to make this perfect inside SketchUp. So it could be very much a lot easier just to make some of those little changes inside Photoshop. So from here, we can go ahead and click on Scenes, and we're going to save the scene just like we did our elevations. Okay. So I'm going to add this scene, save as a new style. So I'm going to create that. I'm going to rename this. Let's see. Rename scene. I'm going to go ahead and call this Plan View. Okay. Now I'm going to go through these next couple steps relatively quickly. We've all done them a couple times, so we should kind of know how to do that. We're going to go over to Styles, and the first view that we're going to create is the Hidden Line view. It's probably already in Hidden Line view, but let's just double check. So if we click on Default Styles, we can click on Hidden Line. So good. I also just noticed that I turned my axes back on, so let's turn those off. Okay, and then from here we're going to go ahead and go up to File, Export 2D Graphic, and I'm going to make sure I save this to my thumb drive. All right, go to today's folder, and I'm going to call this Yosemite House Hidden Line. Okay. Sorry if this is a little bit of a repeat, but I think it always helps everyone just to go through it a couple times. So we're going to go to Options. We're going to make sure that we bump up the size of this. If you guys were noticing that your image is a little pixelated last time, maybe up the resolution just a little bit. Okay. Last time I did 6,000 and it worked out pretty well. But remember that you are exporting this as a raster graphic and not a vector graphic. So this is not a nice PDF that we would typically get from AutoCAD. This is actually, you're essentially exporting a picture. Okay, that's the only downfall of SketchUp. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this to uncheck Use View Size. I'm going to change this to, we'll say 6,000. That should be pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK, and I'm going to click on Export. I'm going to go ahead and skip the X-ray. I know last class and the class before we exported an X-ray view. You're probably not going to need it for your floor plan. I don't think you'll notice anything different unless you have maybe a basement and there's something going on below your floor. But my guess is that's probably not the case. So we're going to go ahead and skip X-ray, and we're going to go ahead and export our shadows. Okay, so I'm going to, let's see, go find my shadows in my tray, which doesn't look like, oh, there they are. Okay, so I'm going to click on shadows. I'm going to go ahead and turn those on. And one thing to keep in mind is that when you turn on shadows in the section view is that you'll get that shadow casted inside of your building, okay? That's not what we're looking for. That's, I guess you could kind of think of it that way. You could think that maybe there's sun shining through the windows and you could essentially have a shadow, but we're gonna avoid that today, okay? So in order to create that or to get rid of the shadows inside, what we're gonna do is we're going to actually turn back on our section cuts, or I'm sorry, we're gonna turn them off. Okay, so that we see the top of our house. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to go over to layers. I'm sorry, not layers. We're going to go up to edit, and we're going to turn off the edges. Okay, so that we're getting just just the shadows and not the roof, okay? You're gonna get little glimpses of the roof, but that'll be okay, all right? So we're gonna go ahead and go to File, Export, and we're gonna go back over to 2D Graphic, and we're gonna do the exact same thing. We're gonna call this Shadows, okay? And we're gonna go to Export. Okay, so we can go ahead and turn our section cuts back on. Notice that this does change. Obviously, it changes it quite a bit, but you know, you do actually want the shadows from some of the higher up elements. So there is some positive parts about doing what we just did. Okay, but you're not going to have to edit out all of the shadows from the interior once you bring it inside Photoshop. Okay, so now we can go ahead and turn shadows off. All right, and let's see, what am I missing? Oh, I gotta turn edges back on. Notice that I'm missing a lot of the line work from the interior of my building. Okay, so we need to go back over to Edit and check edges again, all right? And we can create a couple more different styles. So we can go back to Select, and last class we kind of messed around with the sketchy edges, okay? So we can find the one that we might want to incorporate into our plan view, okay? I'm going to go ahead and do, this is all kind of a little too much for what I'm looking for. I got to turn off that autosave. I just talked about it and I'm falling for it myself. I'll show you guys how to do it here in just a sec. Well, if you guys go back and watch this video, half the video is going to be just the file saving. So if you go up to get rid of that autosave feature, if you go over to, let's see, I just did this a couple days ago. If you go over to Window and you click on Preferences and you go down to, I believe, General, you can change the autosave right here to, we'll say, like 20 minutes or so. And then at least continues to autosave it, but it's not going to autosave every 5 minutes. Okay. So let's find our last export that we want to use, okay? I think the one that I want is going to be, let's do this one. Let's do Pen Sepia, okay? Let me turn off my section planes again, and we'll go ahead and go through that same process, File, Export, and we're gonna go ahead and go into a 2D graphic, and let's find my thumb drive again. Let's call this Sepia. Okay. If you want to do more, up to you. You can do 3, do 4, do 5, do whatever you need to do to get the look that you're trying to go after. Okay. So that'll be good. So now we've created our floor plans. All right. We've created our floor plans inside Sketchup, and now let's bring them inside Photoshop. So let's open up Photoshop, and we'll continue down the road to creating a rendered floor plan. Okay, so we're going to go to File, we're going to go to Open, and we're going to open up that first file that we created, okay? So let's go to my Today's folder, and let's click on the Yosemite House hidden line, okay? So we're going to click on the hidden line, and that will give us our base file that we're going to be working with, okay? And then we're going to go to File, Place, and we'll go ahead and bring in the shadows. And we're going to, just like last, I don't think this is going to work right. So I just noticed that this is a little bit off. Let's just see. Yep, I think it moved. Let me try to fix this really quickly. Let me go back to SketchUp. Let me go back to my scene. So the good thing about creating that scene is you can always click on or double click on that scene. You can see what happened. I probably accidentally zoomed out at one point. Okay, so this was our original image. Let me just go ahead and export this again just to make sure that it's correct. And then I'm just going to re-export my shadows really quickly. Let's see. All right, so I'm going to go to File, Export, and 2D Graphic. So one thing that I noticed about my actual image is that I'm actually cutting off the shadow a little bit. Probably try to avoid not to do that just something I just kind of caught in the middle of doing this, but I'm not going to go back and fix that at the moment. But ideally, I would want to see the entire shadow of that roof. Okay, so I'll go ahead and export this one as shadows. And I'm not going to worry about the other one at the moment. Let's go ahead and go back to Photoshop. Let's go do that one more time. So we're going to go to Open. We're going to go ahead and start with the hidden line view. Okay, and I'm going to go to File, Place, and I'm going to bring in the shadows. Okay, so that looks good. Go ahead and place that. We're going to change the blending mode over to Multiply. That allows us to see the exterior portion of our shadow. Okay, ideally I should have zoomed out in my floor plan just a little bit to give my building just a little bit more context, but this will be okay. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is we need to actually get rid of some of the interior shadows. Okay, you can see that by doing the process that we completed earlier, that there are some interior shadows, and you're going to have to go ahead and correct a couple of the small imperfections that unfortunately SketchUp gives you. Okay, so you can see here that I can actually see the shadow outline from the roof. I don't necessarily need that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and change this layer to a layer just called shadows. All right, so let's see, I'm just going to double click on that, call this shadows, and we're going to make a couple edits to what we have here on our screen. So I'm going to use my lasso tool. I'll use my rectangular marquee, and I'm going to select. Actually, let's just select on the interior. Don't want to go too far outside. I forgot that portions of my walls are actually outside. So I'm going to drag my marquee all the way around my space. And this might be a little bit different for everyone because everyone has a different floor plan. So you may have to do this, you may not have to. But usually when you export shadows out of SketchUp, it doesn't always do it perfectly. Okay, so you probably have to either get rid of a couple things in Photoshop or add a couple things, or both. Okay, so I went ahead and used my rectangular marquee to go over my shadow layers. I'm going to click on the shadow layer, and I'm going to go ahead and delete that. Oh, it's telling me I can't because I need to rasterize it. So I'm going to rasterize that, and now I can go ahead and delete those interior shadows. Okay, and the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to just fix these little areas up here. Okay, so I'm going to again use my rectangular marquee tool. I'm going to go ahead and fill in some of these spots. I'm holding down the Shift key so that I can create multiple marquees. Okay, so we'll have something about like that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy this over. So I'm going to fill in the shadow color into these spaces. Okay, so I'm going to go over to my brush tool, and I'm going to hold down Alt. Holding down Alt opens our eyedropper. Okay, so I can select the color that I want to create. All right, so that go ahead and if you look up in my color toolbox up here, you can notice that I selected that gray from the shadow, and I can go ahead and fill in these spaces right here. Okay, now when I do Control D, it looks as if you can't even tell that I did that. Okay, I have one more little area of imperfection, and that's this little area right here. So I can use something maybe like my, probably the same one actually will work just fine. So the rectangular marquee, I can go ahead and fill this in. Alt, I think this gray is a little bit different than the one that I just created. Okay, so that looks good. So that'll be good enough for our shadows. Okay, could probably fine tune it just a little bit more, maybe some of these edges right here, but I think you guys probably get the point. All right, so that looks pretty good for our shadows. So let's move on from kind of our basic SketchUp views that we have that we're currently working with, and let's look at how we can start to make this more of a rendered floor plan. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to select a background for our floor plan. So if we think about what the ground might look like, the closest thing that I can kind of relate that to is a grunge image. Okay, so remember a while back ago when we searched the Creative Commons, we found a grunge image. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. We're going to look for something that kind of replicates a ground plane. Most likely you're not going to be able to find a giant image of dirt. Okay, you may be able to. You can probably type in dirt texture and you can get dirt, they don't have a lot of character to them. They're basically, it's just dirt. There's nothing exciting about it. We're looking for something that has a little bit more character to it that looks like, it has some life, okay? So we're going to go to our Creative Commons. So creativecommons.org. Okay, so we're going to search the Commons. Click on Flickr, and let's type in Grunge Image. And let's see what we get. We're looking for something that kind of resembles dirt, something that has some character to it. So kind of finding the right one may take a little bit of time, but it's worth it. It's worth finding the right image. So maybe we use something kind of like this. This looks kind of interesting. Okay, so let's use this one. This is actually a watercolor texture. Remember, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be the color of ground. You can fix that inside of Photoshop. This particular image that I found, I like some of the qualities to it. I kind of like some of the scarring in it, and I like kind of the gradation of the coloring inside the image, okay? So this will work for what I'm looking for. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and click on download this photo. I'm gonna download the original size. And you're gonna wanna put this on your thumb drive. I actually already have about 10 of these images on my thumb drive, so I'm not gonna put another one. All right, and so from here, we can go ahead and bring this inside Photoshop. We're gonna go to File, Place, find our grunge image, and we're gonna go ahead and stretch this. Keeping this in proportion is not really important, so if you need to kind of just fill the screen, that is okay, all right? There's not really any proportion to these grunge images, okay? So I'm just gonna go ahead and fill the screen, go ahead and do place, all right? And I'm going to make this the background of my image. Before I do that, I'm going to layer from background to make this an actual layer. That will allow me to bring it below my layer 0. But before we do that, let's go ahead and change this to multiply. Okay, that allows us to be able to see through and see the image that we're looking for. And what we're going to do now is we're going to want to cut out the floor plan from the background image, okay? So we did something very similar to this last class when we did the elevation, okay? So to repeat that process, I'm gonna go ahead and turn off the grunge image for now. I'm gonna turn off the shadows as well. And I'm going to use my magic wand tool, and I'm going to select, clicking on layer 0. Layer 0 is my background image. I'm going to select the outside perimeter of my floor plan. Make sure that your marquee doesn't go inside of the floor plan, okay? So this looks good. If you have any loose edges or something like that, it may be very easy for the marquee to flow inside your floor plan. Okay, so this looks good. I'm gonna go ahead and turn back on my grunge image. I'm gonna select that grunge image, and I'm gonna move down and I'm gonna click on add layer mask, okay? That will allow the floor plan to cut itself out of the grunge image, okay? So what else can we do to make this pop a little bit, okay? So as I mentioned earlier, I don't want the grunge image to be green, okay? I would probably want this to be maybe brown, maybe just black and white, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and move forward with black and white. It's really important to be able to add really nice kind of surrounding texture and elements to the floor plan, but you don't want them to necessarily be overpowering of the house, okay? Don't forget that the main focus is the house and the content that is inside, okay? Not so much the background, but you can certainly make the background pop and look, kind of as an integral part of Yosemite, okay? There'll be times when you just create your simple floor plans where you're just looking for a nice, clean black and white drawing, but there will be times when you want a nice kind of rendered image, okay? So that's what we're kind of working on today. So from here, I'm going to make my background image black and white. So I'm going to go up to layer, and then I'm going to click on new adjustment layer, and I'm going to go down to channel mixer, okay? So that's not what I want, I'm sorry. Let me get rid of that. That's not the one I want. So new adjustment layer, and then I want, let's see, color balance. Okay, this is what I'm looking for right here, okay? Well, actually it's not. No, maybe channel mixer is what I want. I wanted to be able to check monochrome. I think I was actually correct. I think there was just another There was another box that popped up that didn't look right to me. Okay, yes, I was actually correct. I was correct originally. So let me get rid of the color balance layer. I do not need that. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and double check, or I'm going to double click on the little icon, and I'm going to click on monochrome. Okay, so this went ahead and made my background, my grunge texture, black and white. All right, so which is good. I'm going to go ahead and leave this as is. If you want to adjust what that kind of looks like, maybe you want some kind of darker, deeper tones, you can mess with some of these sliders to get the overall effect that you're looking for. Okay, if you don't want monochrome, obviously don't check that. You can manipulate the sliders to maybe get maybe a nice tan, maybe a nice other color that you're looking for. Maybe let's go ahead and just do that really quickly so that you can kind of see how that might work. So let me just delete that layer. Let's go back to layer, and we can go to new adjustment layer and channel mixer. Okay, and here we can start to manipulate some of that coloring. Let's see, maybe we want something kind of like, that. Okay, so that makes it kind of brown. It makes it kind of a little bit better resemble the dirt that we might be working with. Okay, so I'm going to leave it maybe like that. But instead of leaving it that bold, I'm going to click on my channel mixer, and I'm going to do Control-Alt-G. Remember that doing Control-Alt-G will apply that layer to only the object below. And then now I can click on that object. Maybe I reduce the opacity a little bit so it's not quite so loud. Okay, so maybe it's something kind of like that. Of course, remember it always looks a lot darker on this projector than it does on my screen. Okay, so that looks pretty good for my grunge image. I'm going to go ahead and go with that. Okay, I may alter it a little bit at the end once I kind of see after the things kind of come together. Okay, but let's go ahead and move on to the next layer of detail. Okay, so remember when we were putting together our floor plans inside of AutoCAD, we added a hatch to the interior of our wall to be able to make the cut portions of the wall pop out. Okay, so we're going to do that same thing. We're going to go ahead and create a new, what kind of layer? New what? New fill layer. New fill layer, we're going to click on solid color. Okay, we're going to go ahead and call this wall fill. We're going to hit OK. Oops, here, let's actually, let me back up. Let me actually select the portions that I want to fill first. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go back to my layer 0, and I'm going to click on my magic wand, and then from here I can select all the interior portions of my wall. Okay, may also want to select the mullions. Okay, so I'm going to select the interior portions of my walls. Bear with me for just a second. Okay, some of these that one selected a whole bunch, which is good. Try to go as quick as I can. Okay, so I'm going to select all of the cut portions. And remember that when SketchUp exports this, you can tell which are the cut portions because they have the bolder black lines. Okay, so you can see what's cut and what's not. Notice that this wall is a nice bolder black line, whereas the wall below is faint and gray. Okay, so it's starting to come together just a little bit. Let me get these last few. One more right here, a couple more over here. Did I miss one? I don't think that's actually cut. That's also at a slope. Maybe it is. Actually, I think it is. Let's go ahead and select that as well. Select these last columns, these last mullions, and that should do the trick. Let me just make sure we didn't missed a couple up here. And looks like maybe one more. And of course, there's always a couple stragglers. Okay, so this looks pretty good. So again, I can now go back to my layer. I can go to, layer. We're going to go to new fill layer and solid color. Okay, so we're going to call this wall fill. And you'll notice that it filled with a nice gray all of the portions of my floor plan that are cut. The color that fill is up to you. I'm going to go with maybe like a nice dark gray. Okay, some people do black, some people do gray. I'll let you guys make that decision. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And that'll give us the nice fill that we're looking for on our interior portions, okay? So that's looking pretty good. Let's take this a step further. What are some other objects in our floor plan that we might be cutting through, especially if we're out in Yosemite?
Fireplace.
Outside of the house. Trees, of course. So let's add some let's add some trees to our scene. Okay, so I'm going to turn the shadows back on. That gives a little bit more depth to our image. Okay, so from here you're going to want to find a plan view of a tree. Okay, so you could search the Commons, you could search Google to find those. They are readily available. There's plenty out there. I have a handful already on my thumb drive. I'm going to go ahead and, for the sake of time, just go ahead and pull those up. 16A, let's see, trees, and let's open up, actually I'm just going to open them first because I'm not sure what these look like since I can't view the thumbnail. Let's see, trees. These are all trees in elevation. Okay, so let's open up these. Okay, so this is actually a file that I have in my, I actually use these for work right here. Okay, so let's figure out which one. I want to maybe use this green one right here. Okay, along with, but what I don't want is its shadow. So let me figure out really quickly which one. I think it's this one right here. Nope. This one right here. Okay, so, oh, you know what though? I don't want the shadow. I want to put the shadow in myself. So maybe this one won't work. Let me go back to one of my other files, trees. We will use that in a second. Let me see what else I have. Site plan trees. Let's see what this guy is. Okay, this is perfect. This is exactly what I want. So I'm going to go ahead. You're probably going to find stuff like this on the Creative Commons. You'll find things like this on Google as well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and select this first one because I don't want the kind of the shadowing texture. But also, one of the things that I like about this image is it's kind of a sketchy tree. It's also kind of very similar to our SketchUp floor plans that we created. Okay, the goal is to not necessarily make this as photorealistic as possible. I'm kind of looking for, you know, kind of a nice little sketchy look to my floor plan, so it doesn't look so rigid and so real. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and use my marquee tool. I'm going to go ahead and select this tree, maybe just a little bit more, and I'm going to Control C, and I'm going to go back over to my floor plan and Control V. All right, and that will bring in the tree onto my floor plan. Now let's move this up into a higher layer, okay, so that it pops a little bit more. All right, I'm going to go ahead and do Control T to be able to transform this and make this tree a little bit bigger. So maybe we do something kind of like that. Okay. What you might want to do, and I'll do this in just a second, is maybe you have 3 or 4 trees inside your plan. Maybe they all kind of alter in size just a little bit. Okay, so it kind of fluctuates around your scene. Okay, so just like I did before, you may want to make this black and white. You may not. I'm actually going to revert back to. I kind of want to make my background black and white again. Let me just change that to black and white. I think that will better resemble kind of the look that I'm eventually going to want to go for. So just like we did for the Grunge image, I'm also going to make this tree black and white. Okay, so again, I'm going to click on that layer 1. That layer 1, I'm going to go ahead and rename this to tree 1. Okay, and just like I did for my Grunge image, I'm going to insert a new adjustment layer, go down to channel mixer, and I'm going to click on monochrome. Okay, that will allow the tree to not pop so much. I don't want the trees to be overly distracting, but again, up to you on what kind of an image you're looking for. If you guys want a colorful background, that is totally fine. I will support it. Okay, so here we go. Here's our first tree. All right, and again, I'm going to do Control Alt G to make sure I apply that to just the tree below. Maybe we alter this just a little bit to make the edges of the tree pop just a little bit more. That looks pretty good. Okay. Yeah, it's starting to come together. I'm actually going to make my tree just a little bit bigger. Okay, and the next thing that we're going to add is we're going to add a shadow. Okay, so just like we did before, you could kind of, you could make a gray silhouette of this object and make a shadow similar to kind of what you see here. But I think the reality is that it would probably be a little bit different. So I'm actually going to use something that looks like this. Okay, so we all know what kind of trees are up in Yosemite, so we're going to pretend that we know what kind of trees are around our scene. So I'm going to go ahead and Control C. You could also just place this right into your file. That would be okay as well. And Control V. Whoops. Let me select my... I don't want that. Control. Okay, there we go. So there's my shadow, or there's my silhouette of the tree that that I just found. You can also find these on Creative Commons and Google pretty darn easily. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try to duplicate the shadow that we have in our building, but I'm going to duplicate it on the tree. Okay, again, I'm going to go to Control T for transform, and I'm going to rotate this tree. All right, so I'm trying to match the shadow from my building. Okay, so you can kind of see that the shadow is going off in that direction. I'm going to do the same thing for the tree. All right, I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. All right, I'm going to go ahead and bring this, go ahead and click apply. And let's add a little bit of a transparency to this so that we can see what we're hitting. Okay, maybe this is just a little bit smaller. And maybe even a little bit more. Okay, so we get something that kind of looks about like that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click on place, and I'm going to apply. I'm going to turn off this shadow for just a second. And I'm going to use my quick selection tool, and I'm going to go ahead and try to select as much. Whoops. Before you use that quick selection tool, make sure you click on the layer that you're trying to use. Let's make my brush size just a little bit bigger. All right, I'm going to select my tree and plan. All right, that looks pretty good. That's close enough for what we're doing, okay? So again, I'm going to turn my shadow of my tree back on, and I'm going to click on that layer, and I'm going to delete that portion of the shadow, like so. And I can also get rid of a few other little things. I don't need the trunk of the tree popping out on this side, okay? So I'm going to use my eraser tool, and let's make this a little bit bigger. And let's erase that portion of that image that we brought in. Probably don't really need that either. Okay. And that looks pretty good. Okay. So we're starting to get our shadows from our trees. We're starting to get shadows from our building, and we're starting to get some nice texture to our building. Okay. So maybe we lighten up that shadow of that tree just a little bit. Remember when we were doing shadows, we talked about kind of matching, making sure that the shadows match the shadows of other portions of the image so they don't look too much different. Okay, so we make this about 30, maybe a little bit more, 40%. Okay, so there we go. That looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and group these two right here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to merge these layers. All right, so I'm going to go to merge layers, so these now become one. And instead of reproducing that maybe 3 or 4 times, I'm just going to now duplicate that layer, hit OK. And maybe we do something like this. Now, something that you might do to maybe make yours pop a little bit, you could have multiple tree types, okay? So that would be kind of a nice texture to create. You might have maybe 2 or 3 of these different plan view or tree plans for your image, just to kind of get a nice kind of fluctuation in trees, okay? Maybe we do this just one more time. I'm going to bring this over here. And I'd say that looks, maybe we kind of put it off to the side. I'd say that looks pretty good. Okay, so let's do one more thing before we go. All right, and let's go ahead and add a little bit more texture to our floor plan. Okay, so you guys might have things like tables, chairs inside to make that floor pop just a little bit. Okay, let's go ahead and add some hardwood to our plan. Okay, so this will be a very similar process to how we added hardwood, textures to the exterior face of our building last class. Okay, I already have these. You can find these on Creative Commons, but I believe I already have a few in my thumb drive. Let's see what these look like. Okay, so here's a wood texture right here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and place this. I'm going to move this above my channel mixer so that I get the color. So the interior portion of the floor plan is actually what I want to pop. So maybe what I would recommend is have kind of a very, mild toned kind of outside, and then allow the color to pop on the inside of the building. Okay, so that the actual interior of the floor plan pops more than the outside. I think right now the scale of this image is already pretty on par. I'm pretty happy with this right now. Okay, so just like we did last time, I'm going to go ahead and tile this. So I'm going to duplicate the layer. I'm going to move it over, duplicate it a few more times. Okay, so this is a seamless texture. Notice that you can't see the lines that are separating these images. Okay, duplicate this one more time. Bring this down, and now I'm going to merge all of these layers together. All right, so merge layers, and I'm going to go ahead and double click on this, call this wood floor. All right, I'm going to hide this here for just a second, click on my original background layer, use my magic wand to select all of my interior floors. Okay, so I'm going to select that interior. I think that, that was actually quite perfect. Wow. So that will work good. So now I can go back, turn on my wood floor, click on that wood floor, and again, click on my add layer mask. Okay, and just notice how that gave us kind of our nice wood floor texture. If it's a little too loud and a little bit too much, you can always reduce the opacity. So maybe I bring this to like a 60, maybe like 70%. When you do save, right now it looks a little gray, and that means that you're thinking, oh, maybe I don't want mine to actually be gray. When you save it as a JPEG, it won't be quite that gray, okay? Just something to consider. So that'll be it for today. You may want to add, in my case, to make this pop a little bit more, I might add a few more textures, okay? I might add some textures to the base of my building, okay? That might be kind of the next step that I would take to give my floor plan some life. I might also give some color and some texture to some of the interior elements, like the the bathtub and the kitchen table. So that would kind of be the last and final step to making this image pop. But other than that, that's about it. That's kind of what we're looking for. I think it's the second time I think I did that last class, looking for. But that's about what we're looking for this exercise. Okay, so that's a nice example of a rendered plan. All right. Any questions before we sign off? Yes.
Do we have to add furniture?
You can if you want to. Up to you. I mean, I think things like certain furniture, like kitchen cabinets and kind of kitchen items and bathroom items, help define those spaces. But you don't need to go all crazy necessarily with adding couches and bedroom furniture. You can if you want to. It doesn't take that long. You can find images to pull into your floor plan pretty easily and pretty quickly. It probably wouldn't be too much extra effort, but I'll let you make that decision. All right. Go ahead and end this here.